that he was on, and so me and David used to do a lot of driving around together. We used to do a lot of talking, so a lot of our thoughts went back and forth, and ideas went back and forth on many of the same things that we hear here over the years. But anyway, so for years I've been doing studies on and off of why and how Israel became two houses, why they became separated. And so there's not any, we can go through the scriptures and find definite ideas of separation, how the north was separated from the south, vice versa. But if we really go back in scriptures and study and look, we can see what's called pictures or patterns of things that have been set up before us that point to these same things. Not, every teaching has a literal teaching. It says, the world, in the beginning the world was without, was void and mass, and he created the earth and he created the heaven. That's literally what he did, okay? But there's also a picture there of his whole the whole creation is inside of that picture. And so when we're going through the scripture, we can always look back and say, that's what happened when this happened, when he was doing the very first thing, making the heavens and the earth. Everything was there. It was all in it. At the end of the first day, or at the end of the third day, he said it was good, so everything that he did was good. So we can go into that, and in some parts of the scriptures, you're going to see a statement that says that he reveals the end in the beginning. So he reveals a lot of things in the beginning and the end. Remember, beginning goes all the way through Bereshit, Genesis, okay? Bereshit, Genesis, means beginnings, okay? So everything that we have in Genesis is pretty much the beginning of something, okay? So, and this is a study that I've done, and I just want to say this, the study and the conclusions or the opinions that I have are mine, okay? This does not make it against anybody else's, because there can be so many meanings and so many explanations on how things happen and are done. So it's not to say somebody else is wrong, because I don't believe there's anything wrong in the scriptures. I think it's how we interpret the scriptures and how we look at them. And we can all learn from each other. And I'm prayerful that each and every one of you will learn a little bit, or at least go study some of these things out and see if you see what I see, or see something better, and you can come back and let me know about it. Because that's how that started out from the Sabbath. I heard about the Sabbath, and all of a sudden I started reading about it, and that was it. I was stuck on it. I couldn't get it out. So I just thought it was all about the Sabbath. But it is about the Sabbath, that seventh Sabbath with the kingdom. But anyway, so I just wanted to let you know that this is a study that I've done. Me and David have done these studies, and we've agreed and disagreed about different things throughout the years. But I'm not saying anything's wrong. Okay, so when and where do we find the division of the house of Israel and or the patterns of these events? And can we see these things today in our times, or all these things of the past? How are things of the past relevant today? So, with that in mind, I had a few notes on here that when I'm doing this, so I have to skip around a little bit because my mind popped onto something, so I started something else in the middle of it. So if you turn to Bereshit, Genesis 32, if you want to do that, I should have it here. And starting in verse 6 of chapter 33, somebody read through 10. 6 through 10.
My 6 says, I have cattle, donkeys, and flocks, and male and female servants. I am sending them to tell this news to my Lord in order to win your favor. The messengers returned to Yaakov, saying, "We went to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you. With him are 400 men." Yaakov became greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people, flocks, cattle, and camels with him into 2 camps, saying, "If Esau comes to the one camp and attacks it, at least the camp that is left will escape." Then Yaakov said, "Yah, my father Abraham, and God of my father Yitzchak, Yahweh, who told me, 'Return to your country and your kinsmen, and I will do you good.' I'm not worthy of all the love and faithfulness you have shown your servant, since I crossed the Jordan with only my staff, but now I have become 2 camps."
And that's the part I wanted you to get to, the 2 camps, okay? So, first of all, Yaakov is leaving Laban, and he's headed back to where he was in Canaan. And he's taken all of his family and all this. We've all read the story about it. And he's meeting Esau, so he was really depressed. So going into, don't have them all marked in here. 24, when you go down to verse 24. This is the first time we hear, he's talking 2 camps, all right? He's one family. He's got 12 boys, or 11 boys and a daughter coming out of Laban's area, headed to the he's back at the point that he was at when he first left, and he put his head on the rock and he's seen the ladder going to and fro, messengers ascending to and fro. So that's the location he's at. So when you get to what the heck did I write here? You guys are gonna have to put up with me, know that. I'm not used to standing up here, huh? I go through this every time. Verse 24. And Yaakov was left alone, and his man wrestled with him through the night. That's not right. Okay, so anyway, at some point in here, oh, it's 33, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So we get in this picture where he wrestles, and his name is changed to Israel, okay? And so now we have I'm looking at divisions and splits. So he's not Yaakov anymore, he's Israel, okay? So when you get to chapter 33, and your first verse, it says, "And Yaakov lifted his eyes and looked at Esau coming, and with his 400 men, and he divided the children among Leah and Rachel, and the 2 female servants, and he put the female servants and their children in front, and Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last." So he set up 2 columns of people. He had, and if you look at this, there was only one child of Rachel's. She had 2 other ones, 3 other ones that were, or 2 other ones that were by Bella, whatever her name was. So there was 3 children, and the maidservant and Rachel were last. And he put another column of the other ones first, looking at it this way: if they attacked the first column, the second one would be saved. All right. Now, once you look at a picture here, a picture that shows you a couple of things. It shows you that Yosef is representative of Ephraim and the northern tribes, because that's how the lineage goes throughout the scriptures. Yehuda, although Reuben was the oldest in the family, Reuben was put down a few notches. Yehuda kind of took over in the family. So Yehuda is divided from Joseph or Ephraim or Israel, okay? It's a picture. There's several pictures there. It's also a picture of when the Israelites were put out of the land and went north, they lost their identity out there. But Yehuda, the tribe of the south, never lost their identity. And if you look at the way the world has treated our brother Yehudas throughout the centuries, they've always been the scourge of everybody. They've always been the people that have been attacked. for what that people believed they were. And basically, the original people that were after them were their relatives, Midian, Moab, all of these different people that came from Abraham. The six boys that he had, or however there were, that Abraham had by his second wife, those were all relatives. Esau's relative. Esau is the number one leader. Ishmael is a enemy of them. So when you look at them today, you're looking at what? They're surrounded by their enemies, and the house of Israel, the northern tribes, are out mixed in with the world and have never been anywhere. We basically lost our heritage. In fact, there's no place in the scriptures or in history that shows that there was ever a migration of the Jewish people, the Yehudites, moving to the north. They only moved to the south. They went to Babylon, which was southeast, but they never left from the north, or they never moved to the north. But the house of Israel did, and they moved all over the north. They were in Russia, Europe, some say in the Americas, we don't know. But there are some evidence that there was people here, at least 400 or 500 years ago, or 600 or 1,000 years ago, that knew how to write in Paleo-Hebrew. So we know that, so there must have been somebody here. But is what I believe happened, my opinion, I can't prove it, and I don't think anybody could disprove it. These people that went north into Spain, that were Israelites, were still keeping the commandments, okay? And they were keeping the Passover, and they were doing Sabbath. But because of what happened with the Romans, and how they put the laws against anybody that was doing Jewish things, you were considered a Jew if you kept the Sabbath, if you kept the feast days, if you did any of his teaching and instructions, you were a Jew. And they made a law against him. So that passed through the world. I don't know where the word Jew came from. It's probably some kind of a conjunction between Hebrew and something else, but it's an English word. It's not a Hebrew word. So when they went north and they did that, they picked up the title of Jews because that's what the people were calling them and ingrained to them. So I really believe that all of these people in Russia and Germany during the Second World War and the Spanish Inquisition, these were just Israelites that were keeping the Sabbath, keeping Torah. I don't think you can find anywhere in history where where they migrated in any numbers. But anyway, that's just the point. But my point is here, we got a division of the house. We've got Joseph and Judah, they're in separate groups. So we can see a picture of the division of the tribes. We can see a picture of the protection that Yaakov put up for his family, thinking that if they attacked this one could escape, and so I would have half of my family. And you could look at it today. Look at the world around us and see how things are divided up. And it seems like we have some good in places, or people that are good, or don't get me wrong. There's not a lot of people out there doing what we're doing, keeping Sabbath, keeping the Passover, trying to do the things and to be constantly in search and in pursuit of his teaching and instructions, right? But there's a lot of good people out there in the world. And there's a lot of bad people out there in the world. So there's the division in the world that the Creator has made starting back then. And it goes on today. That's just a thought I threw in there. So anyway, they can, like I said, patterns can be more than one thing. And you can look at any teaching in any scripture and any writing, and you can see these things that mean more than one thing. First of all, this great friend I had, Brad Scott, we used to do, I did some traveling with him, and those were some pretty good times. But anyway, I remember one night at my house, and he was getting ready to go, I think, to New Orleans or something to do a teaching and on Hebrew literature to some Christian class down at some university in Louisiana. And anyway, we were talking about the levels that he was, it's a Hebrew thing, rabbinical, they say rabbinical, but it goes back ancient Hebrew, of the four levels of teachings and understandings of the scriptures. So every scripture that's wrote, there's levels of understanding. So the literal thing would be called as a shot, which means it literally says what it says, and that's what it means. There he was, Jacob. He was afraid Esau was going to kill him and all of his family and take all of his cattle. And so he says, okay, I'm going to divide this up, and I'm going to make sure that this one's safe from this one, and then maybe I can save one of the family, because he was really, and that's what he was doing. He was just dividing up his family to protect them. But if you look at the prophetic thing, the Remez, it's kind of a prophetic thing of what's happened in the future, like I just said, something that's going to happen in the future or could happen in the future. And you can see that in there when I lay it out as protect how Israel, the tribes of the northern tribes have been protected because they have lost their identity, which has protected them from the onslaught that the Jewish people have been doing throughout the ages. I don't think there's a time or a century that something hasn't happened that the Jewish people were under attack because they were Jewish or Yehudites. So those two things almost fit into it. And then the possibility of the division of the land is also could be somewhat prophetic too. But we can also see in scriptures in Exodus, when they run into Egypt, where did they go? They were set aside into the best part of the land of Goshen. So all of the people were in Goshen. All of the tribes of Israel were in Goshen. And you see how they were protected after the first couple of plagues, were protected completely from all the plagues. So whatever happened everywhere else didn't happen in Goshen. When it was pitch dark in Egypt, Goshen still had light. When there was thunder, lightning, fire, brimstone eating up everything, that all went away, but in Goshen they were untouched. So all the way through there, it's kind of a picture of these things. And you can see them throughout the scriptures. So anyway, that was my first bit with it, was looking at that. And I talked about it to David. I talked about it with Monty Judah, and Monty Judah agreed with it. He even did a teaching on it back in the late 90s or early 2000 about that same thing. And so I just remembered that when I was sitting there this morning. I was seeing him, I had a copy of Yehovah, his magazine laying there, and I goes, he was talking about this 25 years ago. Same thing. So maybe that's why it was in my brain. But anyway, these pictures, I'm going to show you a couple more of them in here, try to work them. And I'm not trying to, John was working on building up, we're looking at the kingdom and how it's set up. Well, we can see this. We know that Bereshit, Genesis, is the total story of how man came from the creation through the garden into mortality and became a house of Israel, which happened to be his chosen people. And that's all Bereshit is a story of it. From the beginning to the end of Bereshit is about making a house, making his children or his people into one group of people, and that's all Bereshit is. Bereshit means beginning, or we call it Genesis, but Bereshit means beginning in some form. So anyway, when we get up to the point of them in the land, and Joseph is a young kid of 17, and he's sent out to search for his brothers, and they throw him in the pit. The story, everybody knows the pit, and he goes, that's the first point of separation of the family as itself. And it's specific because Joseph, when we read ahead, Joseph is the ones whose children are put in head of the house of Israel. Ephraim is the house of Israel, including Yehudah. in the end, okay, if you read the scriptures, Judah is put into the hand of Ephraim, and they go into what the kingdom is, okay? But we're all the same. In the kingdom, we're all the same, but it's still a picture of how the tribes work. So we have a picture of Joseph being thrown into the pit. Of course, his brothers were going to kill him. Who was the one that just wanted to kill him? Judah, okay, or the oldest one. And Reuben wants to protect him, so he talks him into putting him in the pit, but don't kill him. And then they sell him to the Ishmaelites, and he goes into captivity technically captivity until he gets out of prison for 3 or 4 years. After he's been there, he's in prison, and he gets set up as the chancellor or the governor of the country or whatever, however you want to define it. But anyway, that's a picture of the division between the two houses. That's another one. But then the very next chapter you go into, we got Yehuda walking off with some Abdullite or whatever he is, going out away from his people, and he marries a lady, and they have some boys. And it's very, when you look at the scriptures and you look at the markings of the Aleph Tav, which you've heard me talk about the Aleph Tav before, it's like his signature on something. The only time in that whole deal, because that's there, Yehuda has separated from the rest of the tribe. He's totally separated from everybody else. Joseph is in Egypt. The rest of the tribes are with Father Jacob. And he's by himself, and he's completely left. He didn't marry in his lineage or his brothers or sisters' children out there. He married somebody else. But those 3 boys that were born, every one of those is earmarked on both sides of their names with an olive tav, or at least on one side of their name with an olive tav, meaning that the signature of that person, the reason that they were there was because the Creator put them there. I mean, it's very important that it's there, okay? So 2 of them die. But when you get down to the bottom, that we get to who the lineage of Yeshua is, we don't see that. But we know that's his plan because he made it that way. But we don't see the essence of it because the essence was made at the very beginning, that it wasn't going to be the ones that Yehuda had set up, his 3 boys, right? It was the ones he didn't know about he was going to have them, the twins, right? Those were the ones that set up. But the point I'm making there, Yehuda was separated from them, but it also separated for the reason of the Creator, because Joseph is in Egypt making way to save. You could call him type and shadow of Yeshua, because he was there to deliver the children of Israel, his brothers and sisters, from starvation, right? And Yehuda's over here with his 2 sons by that maybe illegitimate connection, that one of them is going to be the beginning of the lineage to the Messiah. And so we got the picture of these 2 things. We have the deliverer, and we have the king on this side, the lineage of it, that comes to Yeshua, the one that comes to deliver us, okay? What did he come to deliver us from? Hopefully from this life that we have in this world and put us into something better. But anyway, people say salvation. Well, his name, Yeshua, means Yah's deliverance, or Yah delivers. So anyway, that's another, I want to bring in that in because that was the first picture, really physical picture of Yehuda and the rest of the tribes being separated, is on those 2 chapters, okay? So when then we work our way up into the end of Bereshit. I should go back a little bit on that. So as we're doing these patterns, we can go in farther ahead. I mentioned Exodus, but I went back to Yehuda and Joseph's little get together where they're split apart. But going back up into Joshua, which is a very interesting thing. there's a portion in Joshua that sets exactly what happens to, no, I don't need that, I think I can read it off here. If somebody will go to chapter 18, and just read 3 and 4, 3 to 7.
Joshua 18, 3 to 7.
Yeah.
Joshua said to the people of Israel, "How long will you delay going in to take possession of the land which Yahweh, the Elohim of your ancestors, has given you? Appoint 3 men for each tribe. I will commission them, and they are to set out, go through the land, and describe it according to their inheritance. Then they are to come back to me. They are to divide it into 7 portions, with Yehuda remaining in its territory to the south, and the house of Joseph in their territory to the north. You will describe 7 portions of land, and bring the descriptions here to me. Then I will cast lots for you there before Yahweh your Elohim. But the Levites have no share with you, because the office of Kohen to Yahweh is their inheritance, and Gad and Reuben and the half-tribe of Manasseh have received their inheritance beyond the Jordan to the east, which Moshe the servant of Yahweh gave them."
Okay, so the important thing there is that it's specified by Yeshua, or Joshua, and if you look at his name, it's Yeshua, because he's the one that delivered him into the land again. There's several people in the scriptures that have the name Yeshua, but our English translators over the years have changed the names to make them so we don't get them confused. But there's no confusion. Joshua, his name was Husha, which means to deliver, period. And then Moses changed his name to Yahshua because he knew that he was the one that was going to deliver him into the land. But enough of that, okay? So anyway, we see the picture here. Judah to the south, and Ephraim, or the house of Joseph, which is defined by Ephraim, to the north. And if you read farther down, so we go over to chapter 19, and we start out in verse 1, and it says, they're back in the land, and now they've already did the first lot, now they're doing the second lot, and it says the first lot was Benjamin, and it lays out the boundaries. Benjamin is between Yehuda, and it's all the way to the coastline. It's his territory to divide the north from the south, and he's kind of like, David called it a buffer zone. I think so did, I think Brad used to refer to him as the buffer zone too. They were to separate the north from the south. So we have the Yehuda in the south, and we have the other tribes. Reuben and Gad are not part of that northern area because they're not in the promised land, okay? So they're over on the other side of the Jordan with the half-tribe of Manasseh. Anyway, when these people are being moved around, it's very specific how he divided it up and how they divided it off. And you see, when I was talking about the division of the houses or the tribes, back with those little pictures with Judah over here and Joseph here and how they had that division, it's just a picture of what's in the future. Division is what the Creator does well to make things happen, okay? He divided good kings from bad kings, good judges from bad judges, but there were always good judges and there was bad judges, and he divided them, and he made them, both the good and the bad. So anyway, when we get over to 9, it says, "And the second lot came for Simeon, for the child of Simeon, for their clans, and their inheritance was within the inheritance of the children of Yehuda." So if you look at that, Simeon was put directly in the center, well, it's kind of down south, but it's completely surrounded by the territory of Yehuda. And Benjamin is given to Yehuda later on, so there's 3 tribes in the south. And if you look at Yehuda and him surrounding these people, and then you go back and look at when you look at what we read about in chapter 18, were the Levites, or the Luam. Is that what yours says?
Leviim.
Huh?
The Leviim.
Leviim, well, okay, so I see it, they call it they call it with a U, but anyway, same thing. That they had no possessions, okay? Because their possession was the Creator, they were the priests to Yahuwah, so they had no land given to them as an inheritance, but they were giving 12 cities of refuge, okay? So when you read back in chapter 49 of Genesis, and you read what there was related to them from their father Jacob in the last days, that they were going to be they were going to be like oblivious to what's going on. They weren't going to have anything, all right? Everything they had they weren't going to have what they had, okay? So that's a picture of those two people, what they are in the land. The priesthood, you had Aaron and Shiloh at the tabernacle, the tent of meetings, where the Ark of the Witness was, and his family. And then you had the rest of the priesthood, and there was certain priests from each group sent out to these 12 cities of refuge, okay, that were scattered throughout all 12 tribes, okay. So you have a picture of Simeon, that he's got his own area, but he really doesn't have his own area because he's in the middle of somebody else's property. It's like you building a house on somebody else's property, you know. They own the property and you own the house. But you can't go nowhere because they don't want you to cross their property. How's that? But anyway, it's kind of a picture of the separation again. So when you see these things, you can go back and read those things in chapter 49 of Genesis. If you read through there's some very interesting things that befall these people in the last days. It tells you the story of Yehuda and the scepter and the lawgiver, and that they're always in his hands until the time of Shiloh. Well, when Yeshua came, that was it, because he became the lawgiver, right? And he had the scepter. He's given the scepter. He has the scepter right now. So that's a picture of Yehuda's lineage going all the way to Yeshua, and when he came, their authority quit. And of course, when you read the New Testament, you see how many times he was having the word volley, the word badminton back and forth over what the words were and what they meant, and he was always on spot because he only told the truth, and they had added many, many things to all of the laws to make it like a yoke on the people. So these things, see, that's all pictured back in there, and then you can see this working right here with this division of the land on those two people. And then you look at Joseph, and you see him, and he's the largest branch, the most people. He has the most people because it talks about the purity of the womb or something in there, and how his branches reach forever. That's the branches are the people, and the womb is about the many children that are going to be. So that's what Joseph are. We're the largest group of people there is the house of Israel that came through Joseph. Okay. So anyway, those things when I was pulling these up and you're going back and forth, so you go all the way into Genesis, all the way up to Joshua, and all the way back from Joshua, you can go back to, they just go back and forth with each other throughout that. So anyway, I was going back to these 4 levels of understanding. So when you looked at what they were saying, what they're saying about, I'm going to set these people, 2 groups of people, I'm going to do this. This is an actual thing happening, but you can also see on a remez something that's in the future, a prophetic thing that could be happening the same way. The divisions of the tribes, the protection of the tribes through the division over, it didn't happen all at once, but he divided them, and then he sent all the wonderful people of the north to the north, and he left the Yehuda down there to get their brains beat out for 3,000 years or 2,000 years. So, I mean, it's his plan, it's his way. He's not being punishing, but it's all for the purpose of his, I don't know, how would you say that? How does he say it's for his purpose? But anyway, so we get to, when we're talking about all the stuff, you know, Jacob was separated from his family, all right? We look back at that. His father, his mother told him that he needed to go to Laban, down to her her families, to find a wife, to make sure that Esau didn't get a hold of him. That's how all this started, because mother and father separated him from the family. Esau separated himself. But Yaakov was hanging around until they run him out of the house. So go south, young man. Not west, go south. Anyway, I'm going to pick it up a little bit more on there, but I'm giving you the 3 levels of understanding on there. Brad he had a very, he had a great mind. I know most of you people in there know who Brad is, and you heard him because we had him here several years ago. I think John attributes to him getting here because of Brad Scott. But anyway, he was telling me, he says, you got to look at these things. He says, if you look at the 4 Gospels in the New Testament, he says you can see the 4 levels of understanding. And so, I think I wrote them down here somewhere. Hold on a minute. I can't remember them, but I know about them. So, he explains it in using 4 Gospels as examples. The Peshat is the writings of Luke. Now, Luke was a physician, a lawyer, or something like that, and he gave you an exact what was happening. It's not a prophecy, it's what was happening at the time, both in Acts and Luke, okay? And he says, and I'm trying to work these things out, and he says, Matthew, Netanyahu, is the Darsh, which is the Darsh level, and Mark is the Sod. Oh no, I take that back. Matthew is the Remez, so he's like the prophetic thing. Darsh is something that's hidden. And John was the Sod level. He's the spiritual level. He's the one that had the true hidden meanings of who Yeshua was. So when you go back and you read the first chapter of John, which everybody is, I think, when I went to church, they didn't tell us to read anything. They just grabbed us and said, come on in, you know, we teenagers. And, but I think they said the first chapter, they always, in the Christian churches, would tell you to read John, okay? And it's not even the first, they don't even have it canonized as the first book, but I do. So anyway, John, if you're in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word is God. Not was, is, right? So if you translate that out, somebody says the Word is Yeshua. Well, that's true, the Word is Yeshua, but who is Yeshua? So when you read through that, in the beginning was the Word. Isn't it the strangest thing you ever seen, that when you open up the scriptures to Bereshit 1, there's words there, and they're his words, and that's the words that was there. Is all these words in the scripture. Those are the words. Yeshua was given that authority as the Word when he came to life. But if you read who Yeshua was, it says, and I know you all agree with this, it says in there that the one that was rejected or despised, or I don't know how they all read, became flesh and walked among men. Well, if you go to 1 Samuel 7, you're going to see where the northern tribes came down and wanted a king. Wasn't it Yehuda? Because the northern tribes had the tabernacle, and there was kind of a warring thing there. Yehuda stayed to the south. So it was the northern tribes came down and they asked for a king. And when Samuel said that they were, he was hurt because they were rejected him, Yehuda told him, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me as their king. Those are his words in the scriptures, more words. So when you go down to chapter 11, or is it 14, or somewhere down there, it says, and he became flesh and walked among men. So who became flesh and walked among men? Was the Creator himself. He became Yeshua. It goes all the way back to the Shema, the first thing in there. Yahuwah is a Akkad, right? Akkad is one or a unit or a unitized body, many things, but all under one thinking, one word, one belief, one stanza, okay? Do you agree with that? I'm looking at that back there. So I think that's what Akkad would mean. It doesn't just mean one person, huh?
Unity?
Unity.
Unity, yeah. Okay, unity. They're unified, they're unity, and they're always about the same thing. It's the same plan, the same thing, the same words. So when he says he's Akkad, that means there's one, but we have to remember he could be, and he is here watching me stumble around through this teaching, trying to get through it. But anyway, he's watching and he's kind of boosting me. But anyway, those things are important to remember. So when you read John, he's giving you the picture of the spiritualization of that whole life and how he came about. The first wedding, or when he did his first signs, when he did the wine to water, or the water to wine, yeah, water to wine. When you drink a little bit of wine, it turns into water after a while. I didn't mean it like that. I meant it after a while. It just tastes the same. It doesn't have any kick to it. So anyway, but the water to wine, that was his first thing. All of those things that he did. The 40 days in the wilderness with Hasatan, right? The intestine. All of those things are spiritual things. Those are the underlying things, and there's teachings in each and every one of those things. So anyway, this thing is a continue. I'm probably going to be here next week, because I don't know if John said he's going to be here on Sunday. He might.
Yeah, he'll
okay.
be back on Sunday.
So I'll try to. I still have about 4 setups to go on. I got them wrote down here somewhere, and they're all blank. I just have the titles on them. So anyway, we have to go through rulers. We go through rulers, which is Judges, Samuel 1, Samuel 2, 1 Kings and 2 Kings. Little bitty things in there, just looking at of these things that we've been predicted and shown by pictures and patterns from Genesis all the way through to where we're going, of the same things that they tell you about in there. When I just mentioned, them rejecting Yahuwah as their king, because he was king. And they rejected him. When that picture is taken and it passes on, it gets into the teachings of how David came about and how this kingdom started. But it's all about the Creator from the beginning making a family to come to, so that he can keep that family in line, who, no matter what he did, they go good, bad, all the way through scriptures, all the way 40 years in the wilderness. And he still delivered them, and he still gave them the land. And as soon as he gave them the land, they all forgot about him and ended up doing what they did. This is all what this is what the Judges is about, what the Kings is, what Samuel is about, what Kings is about, what Scripture is all about, to get us to where John talks about in the beginning again. And that word and the Messiah. Okay, so all of these things are a picture of the Messiah. The divisions, even the punishment that the people, the Benjamin's was a punishment. If you ever read in chapter 49, they got one verse for Benjamin down there, and it's like, he is the thing at the bottom of the outhouse, okay? It's the guy he's bad. But in reality, how many times in the scriptures does Yeshua or Yahuwah come to fixing, to mending, to bringing back to reality, to bringing back to a tribe, okay? With that said, I'm a little bit short, but a little bit stuttery, but it's time to
prepare our hearts to receive the blessing.
be fell asleep on.